Welcome to the Better Together podcast, where I talk about healing, human connection, and how positive intelligence can empower you no matter where you are on your growth journey. I'm your host, Nakiya, and this episode is the part 2 of my experience of discovering that I am polyamorous by orientation. So let's get back into it. That day and the next day were two really, really tough ones. But I can say now, 2 years later, that was literally just the beginning of an incredible growth journey on both our parts. But it was definitely hard when I was just starting to get my feet wet when it comes to advocating for my own needs to be met and just figuring out what my own needs are so that I could advocate for them. But then to turn around and have that met with, oh, you've changed. You're a different person than the person that I married. Like, I heard that and I wore it as a badge of honor, and she did not mean it in a positive way. I think we have both definitely worked through that. And I think that it showed even more of the insecurity that was rooted in it, that Katie was worried that change was a problem, right? And now coming to a place of, hey, change is inevitable, but can we change and grow together? Can we change and grow in such a way that it doesn't drive a wedge between us? And I think that we've found that place in a beautiful way where we can both be fully autonomous, but still very happy in relationship with one another. But that took a lot. I want to pause the story for a moment here to fully recognize and acknowledge all of that work that took place over the last 2 years. Because I can tell you, when I first came out to her and I first started reading some of the stuff out there, and everything was like, don't just jump straight in. You need to give this time. You need to figure it out. And I was like, that's bullshit. Because I am very much I've made a decision. I want to run with it. I have had that mentality with a lot of things in life, and I attribute it to why I've been as successful in a lot of areas of my life as I have, because I'm not afraid to just make a decision and run with it. I'll make mistakes. I will correct for it and keep going. Make mistakes, correct for it, keep going. So I generally don't have the same level of fear that a lot of people do with trying something new. I'm happy to fail. I think it's a good place to be. That said, it was such hard work. And even as somebody who thought that they didn't really have that much to unpack or deconstruct, when I first came out, I had no idea what I didn't know. And that is the definition of ignorance, right? You don't know what you don't know until you know, and then you learn and you do better. And so in my process of hyperfixating and reading all of the books, I did learn all of the things that I didn't know. And I did realize, wow, I do need to sit with this for a while. I need to sit with, why is it that I feel drawn to and compelled to have these multiple relationships? Why is it that I feel able to show up more authentically that way? And conversely, Katie was also doing similar work. Why is it that monogamy gives her such a sense of safety and security? Is that a false sense of safety and security? Does the marriage license that we have give a false sense of security? I know that for myself, there were many moments throughout those 2 years where I was not certain that we would make it through as a couple on the other side of this. And that's honest. Right? Like, we had some low lows, but I also feel so confident and strong in the relationship that we have now because we both did the work, because we both kept pushing, because we both kept fighting for us. And that's a huge distinction. It wasn't that we were just fighting, but it was that we were both trying to fight for us. We could both see that we were on opposite ends of a spectrum on more than one occasion, but we were both showing up because we wanted to make it work. We wanted to figure out that path through. And I think that is the only reason that we did make it through, is because we were both still so committed to figuring it out together. And if either one of us at any point in those 2 years had thrown her hands up and just been like, it's too hard, I can't do it, that would have been the end. It truly would have. And I would have respected her for it if that was her choice. And I say that with my full chest. I am the polyamorous person. She is not. We got into relationship with an expectation of monogamy. She had a reasonable expectation that that is what we were entering into. And she was by no means obligated to stay if this was something that I wanted, because it was different than what she agreed to. I will also say that I don't think we would have made it through if it wasn't for all of the other shared values that we have. Like, we built a relationship through shared values, not just, oh, I find you attractive and we have fun together. Like, don't get me wrong, that's where it started. That's where it generally starts for most couples. But that's surface level, right? Like, that stuff does not withstand the test of time. Values withstand the test of time. We shared the similar relationship with money, right? We understood that we use money as a tool. We don't believe in carrying debt like most Americans do. And that was really important to both of us. We both have a commitment and love of lifetime learning, to constantly wanting to better ourselves in whatever way that is, right? For me, for a long time, it was just through my career. And I'm wanting to go that way. And now it's so much more, right? It's through coaching. It's through how can I just help people in general. And for Katie, it has been a plethora of different things. She is not the careerist like I am, but she has found so many other passions in life. Right now, it's in books, right? Like, she's just been reading like crazy because she has found that she just really, really loves that. And I love that for her. And so it's just that lifelong learning, but that is an attitude. Like, that is a core fundamental as a human being. I could not date somebody who was like, I'm good with the amount of knowledge that I have and I don't really want much more. I think you just become stagnant at some point. We both have really strong ethical compasses and understanding of right and wrong. And that is obviously really, really important when it comes to shared values. And I think the last one that I will just call out that we really shared is this deep underlying belief that all humans should be free to do whatever they want with their life as long as they're not hurting another human. Whatever that is, however that looks, we both have that fundamental belief in humanity. We both learned a lot, and I mean a shit ton, about ourselves and about each other through this growth journey. And I appreciate that probably more than I realized that I would when we first started out on it. But I am so happy with the person that I am today, being able to live authentically and just be who I am. And I don't think I would have gotten here had it not been for all of the hard work that had to go into it. During this 2 years is when we both figured out that we were neurodivergent. I have ADHD and Katie has autism. And we had both been highly masking our literal entire lives up until that point where we were like, oh crap, we're both just trying to be who we think we're supposed to be. Even though we had bucked the system in our own ways. I mean, obviously we're lesbians, so we're used to not doing what society says in some ways, but patriarchy is hard ingrained, and the more I learn, the more it irritates me. It was really important for us to both realize that we had been masking and not showing up as our authentic selves, or just put the pieces together to be like, oh, that's why I dislike social gatherings so much when it's people who are just energy vampires and that sort of thing. So I found so much value in just being able to learn so much more about Katie too, right? Not just myself, but wow, I get to really be a part of this growth of hers. And that was really special. So if I hop back to 2023, then I will say that right after I came out to her, of course, Katie was looking for support, as any normal person would. I don't think anybody would be able to get through a transition like this without some sort of support. It was really extra hard on Katie because she immediately realized that she didn't feel safe or comfortable talking to any of her friends about it. And that's just tough, period, because it makes you question like the value of the relationships that you keep, right? But also part of the problem was that we were very enmeshed and very codependent. So she didn't have any friends that weren't both of our friends. So she didn't feel like she could just vent to somebody who could just listen with an open mind, as opposed to judging me or judging our relationship or whatever that might turn into. She didn't feel safe. Also, all of her friends are monogamous, and we didn't really have any examples in our lives of happy polyamorous relationships, so she just didn't feel like it was going to be well received. What Katie did find was some monopoly Facebook groups, support groups. And I will say that those were both a blessing and a curse for both of us. There were some that were just for the monogamous side of the partnership. So obviously I didn't join those, but I did join several of the other ones so that we could try to learn together, kind of like analyze some of the specific scenarios that people were presenting and how we would respond to them, that sort of thing. So it helped us in that we could both try and learn together. But the problem was there was so much negativity and toxicity in those groups that it was hard to find anything positive. And that certainly wasn't helping me, right? Like I was very committed to this is who I am, but she's over choosing to use these Facebook groups as her source of truth, so to speak. And everything looks abysmal, and like every relationship is absolutely doomed for failure. If I had to guesstimate, I would say that about 95% of the content on the monopoly Facebook groups, at least a year ago-ish, because I haven't really followed much. I got off of Facebook. But 95-ish% is just bitching and complaining. But I will also give all of the monogamous people credit in those groups that most of their complaining is valid and legitimate, because there are so many assholes out there that are using polyamory as an excuse to just be a dick, to cheat, to be deceitful, to just not be honest and forthright with their partners. Like there's just so much toxicity out there that I really, really feel for a lot of the monogamous people, because some of them were legitimately asking like, am I crazy? And then insert this horrific story of how their partner just disappeared for like 3 days and didn't contact them at all. And be like, oh, I know they're polyamorous, but like, no, that is not okay in any dynamic. So it was tough for me, because I was like, there's no way that we would ever be dealing with that, because we are decent human beings. And there was so much on there that was just, oof, it was rough. And like I said, I feel for those monogamous people. But it was also frustrating because I didn't feel like Katie was getting to see or get the support that she particularly needed, because it wasn't like what anybody else was experiencing. I didn't cheat on her. I didn't go trying to find something quote unquote better. That was never it. I literally went to therapy and realized this is part of my identity and I want to live authentically and I want you to be a part of that. So it was just tough all the way around. It gave her a lot of things to look out for. It's how we learned about what polybombing is. And just to give you a little ADHD side note on that, I understand that it is very, very hard for a monogamous person to go through that experience, to find out that the partner that they had in a monogamous relationship suddenly realized and then shared with them that they are polyamorous. That is the definition of a polybomb. But I will also defend slightly by saying that there's no such thing as a good time or a right time to tell somebody that. It is going to be horrific no matter when you tell them, just not in an argument. You can do better than that. But also, like, the reality is it's going to suck. It's going to suck no matter when they do it, how they do it. Hopefully they try their best to be empathetic and compassionate about it. But the necessity is there. That had to happen for us to be able to move forward. And so as much as I can absolutely validate that it's traumatic for the person receiving the news, that it's hard, that it is just not a good time, it's still necessary. And so to weaponize something like the term polybombed, it didn't feel good to me, not from a place of defensiveness, but simply from a place of, why are we creating a term to just talk about this transition period in a relationship to then make it bastardize the polyamorous person? That's my 2 cents about it, at least. So after Pandora's box was opened, Katie and I were in very, very different places emotionally, right? Like, I was excited, like super excited. I was finally being authentic. I was unmasking. I felt free and open and just so excited about what could be. I didn't know what it was. It was just, I was truly excited for the future. Katie, on the other hand, was terrified with a capital T. She was grieving, like truly, truly grieving, not just the relationship that she had mapped out an entire, like till the end of her life kind of relationship, right? Like, she thought that she knew exactly how it was going to look. And not only that, but then on top of it, add that I'm not the person that she thought that I was. So she was grieving the loss of that person because I did change into a different person. I think we all do as we learn and grow throughout life. But she had never looked at change through a positive lens. She was very confused. She had lost her alignment with her partner that she had felt very aligned with for literal years up until that point. It is understandable to be confused and upset at that point. And she just had that overall fear of loss, right? Like, loss of the relationship, loss of the safety and security that was our relationship, potentially our savings account, the plans that we had made that were long-term plans that would suddenly not be possible if we chose to dissolve our marriage and go separate ways. Unfortunately, because we were still very unhealed at that point, that turned into me leaning into my hyperachiever and really trying to learn as much as I can about polyamory and reading all of the books, having this insatiable appetite to learn as much as I can, and constantly trying to push that on Katie. Even though she wasn't ready for it, she was still grieving, I was still just trying to push forward with everything that I had. I can tell you, as much as Katie was terrified and scared about grieving the loss of the person that I had been up until that point, I was on the opposite end of that spectrum because I was so excited to kill that previous version of me that wasn't authentic, that didn't really feel like me. And that's a hard place to be, right? To be excited to be killing a version of yourself that your partner is literally saying, but that's the woman that I love. Understandably, Katie was not so excited to learn about all of the things that I was learning about. She was grieving. She truly didn't know how to feel about this new person that I was becoming. Katie was forced to consider her own identity and how she showed up in relationship, even though she was very happy in the monogamous life that she had been leading up until that point. She did ultimately work through all of the compulsive monogamy and learn that she truly does choose it, not just compulsively, but that she is monogamous. And then that really came from a place of wanting that same doting relationship that she saw her parents have. So once Katie finally got to that spot of, no, I am monogamous, this is what I choose, not just because, it's the default. That's when we really leaned into understanding the monopoly dynamic and what is possible. Unfortunately, that's also when we learned that less than 10% of previously monogamous relationships, when they attempt to open, are able to be successful. So That did not give a ton of hope because 10% is not a whole lot. Just saying, I don't know where that data came from or how much faith to put in it, but from looking at those monopoly Facebook groups didn't surprise me, right? But I can also say confidently that even though we saw the statistic, we heard it, we both bet on us. We both believed, or at least I did at the time. I don't know if she did initially, but she got there. I believe that we could be that 10%. One, because we're lesbians, first and foremost. We are women, and women are socially brought up in this country to communicate, which really, really worked out in our favor because that is the mantra of polyamory. You must be able to communicate more than you ever thought you would. And so we at least had that leg up, that we were already very good at communicating with each other. And even though we had our saboteurs very much in play, we still talked a ton and we understood how important it was to be able to understand each other and understand what both of us were going through during this process. I was still very much on my unmasking as a whole human journey, not just opening up as polyamorous. And that made me do some reflecting. And I, for the first time in a very long time, I was finally asking, what do I need and want instead of what do we need and want? Now, I'm going to say that with a whole gigantic asterisk next to it, because there's nothing wrong innately with saying, hey, we want to go do this, or we want to see that or do that, or whatever that is. But when that became enmeshment, when that became there, it's bad if I ever say I want this thing as opposed to always existing as a we. That was really eye-opening and freeing for me to realize, hey, we have this enmeshment thing, we have this codependence, and I don't think it's healthy. This codependence, my inability to say I, is how I lost my autonomy. And that was really eye-opening for me. Unfortunately, when I brought that to Katie, it didn't go over really well, just because we viewed it very differently. I started to see it for what I truly believe it is, which is codependence. And she just probably still doesn't believe that to be true. And that's okay, right? Like, I can tell you in that moment, it didn't feel okay. And when that part of the argument came about was probably one of the lowest points for me, at least. Like, that was when I really questioned if we would make it past this, because it was just another fundamental belief difference of, hey, is this codependency or is it not? And I think that we've both worked through what's important underneath all of it. And that's more important than the label to me at this point. Because I think even just the realization of thinking about how we perceive our partner's time and space and autonomy is interesting. One of the really interesting things that I read in one of the many books was assuming that your partner's time is yours simply out of obligation. Like, I married you, so all of your free time is mine. And when you say that as someone expecting your partner's time, you say it sometimes in jest and be like, yeah, you're my wife. Of course that your time is my time. We spend it together. But if you look at that from the other lens and be like, my time is mine. I might choose to spend it with you and do this thing with you or that thing with you. But for my partner to assume that it's theirs by default, simply because that's what happens a lot, is very different. And even Katie today will tell you, I don't want somebody to dictate to me what I get to do with my time. I wouldn't want somebody else to do that either. And that was an incredible place of growth for us to both be able to come back together, at least in that part of it, in understanding that we both get to show up as our authentic selves in this life, and we both deserve that. and then being able to find and connect with each other and in a very intentional way, but that still preserves the I and the we, is a hard place to get to, but the work can be done to get there. And that is one thing that I'm so, so proud of both of us to have been able to work through. I can still say that I understand her underlying positive image of that codependency, because to her, like, that was the image that she grew up with. She grew up in a very happy home with two parents who absolutely adored each other and doted on each other. Her dad was very much in the I will do or be whatever it is that you need me to be to his wife. And that's what Katie grew up seeing as a healthy model of a relationship. It is not unreasonable for her to then look for that in her life. That obviously wasn't my experience. So being able to respect both of our experiences coming into this, and then being able to build for ourselves what looks happy and healthy for us, and it wasn't what I grew up with or what she grew up with, was a good place for us to land, because it's what we choose and what we build together. I also don't want to sugarcoat too much of this, because I know I am in a very, very good place about where we are today, but it was very hard for a very long time, and I don't want to minimize that. And so another one of the places where we got kind of stuck, so to speak, was in this question around being enough. And if you have spent any time in the polyamorous world, or exploring polyamory and monopoly for sure, you'll know that this is a hot button topic, right? Monogamous people who choose monogamy and are very happy in it, have this sense of, but why am I not enough as your partner? And I could probably go on for a very, very long time about that, but to give it to you in a concise little bow for this particular episode, I would implore you to really think about, what does that mean to you? And think about the expectations that we put on a partner in a monogamous relationship. And without going into the deep dive history of, hey, monogamy was created in a time when people didn't live past the age of 30, so it doesn't play out the same way today as it once did. But without going down that rabbit hole, it can be simply explained in a way that we are very, very complex human beings. Some of us more so than others. I would say that I am very complicated. I don't think Katie would disagree. But humans we're complex, and we have lots of different needs, wants, desires, all of those things. And none of that is bad. But for me, to expect a single human being to be able to meet another single human being and meet all of their needs all of the time, one, is an incredible amount of pressure to put on a single person, and two, is quite frankly not realistic. In 2025, in this day and age, it's just not practical. But it is practical to say, hey, I love you. I want to be in a relationship. I accept you for everything that you are, and I'm not going to try and make you into anything that you don't want to be. But there are certainly parts and pieces of me that I want to be able to live out fully, and maybe those parts and pieces don't fit really well with what you want. The best example that I have is, I'm an avid hiker. I love to hike. I love being out in the woods. My body was built for it. Like, I could probably, even if I hadn't been training whatsoever, I could go do an 8 to 10 mile hike. Probably hurt a little bit the next day, but like, I could do it. My wife, on the other hand, has bad knees. She hurt her knee pretty bad in high school playing basketball. She's got flat feet. Like, her body is literally not built for it. Now, I will give her absolute credit that she tries to come with me, and she likes to do short hikes and those sorts of things. She wants to share in that thing that I love. But the reality is, she's never going to go on a 10-mile hike with me. And I wouldn't want her to, because guess what? She would be absolutely fucking miserable, and I wouldn't be able to enjoy it like I would want to, because I would know that she's miserable. And it's okay for me to be like, hey, I'm going to go for a hike with somebody who enjoys hiking because I know that you don't. And that doesn't have to diminish or take away from my relationship with Katie in any way, shape, or form. And I think that the unrealistic expectation that monogamous people put on themselves to be everything to someone is just not realistic. And it doesn't give both partners the opportunity to show up in their best way possible for each other. I need to say this last part as loudly and as clearly as I can. And this is especially true to those monogamous people who are questioning whether they're enough or why they're in this situation. Or the ones who are just assume like, hey, you want to leave me for someone else, you want to cheat, you want to whatever. When you're in a monogamous relationship with someone and one of the partners chooses vulnerability, chooses to be true to themselves and authentic and come out as polyamorous to you, they are making the active decision that they still want you, that you are still enough, that that relationship is still so important and valuable to them. None of that has changed. And I promise you that it would be 100 times easier to simply leave a monogamous relationship and go find other polyamorous people than it would be to stay, to do the hard work, to do the deconstructing, to really rip apart the relationship that was and rebuild it from the ground up. It is monumentally harder to stay. But if that isn't the surest sign of love and devotion and commitment, I don't know what is. And I can tell you even more confidently now, 2 years later, that that is absolutely the case. And because I know I was trying to plead that case early on, like when I first told her, right? She was like, well, is there somebody else you just want to like, no, like I love this relationship. I want this relationship to continue. I just want to be able to be the complex person that I am and have multiple loves in my life in whatever capacity that looks like, and to have it be okay and for us to be able to work through that together. I also want to acknowledge and just appreciate how valuable this 2 years was for us to be able to work through our combined stuff and our individual stuff, because it was needed, even if I didn't know it when I first came out. I needed to learn what a boundary was and how to set them. I needed to deconstruct why we initially thought we needed a whole bunch of rules and that sort of thing, and to really get at the underlying insecurities that is really what was trying to drive those. Like, there's so much to learn about doing polyamory the right way that I am so thankful that I didn't just jump the gun and say, you know what, I feel like you're never going to be ready, so I'm just going to start dating. I didn't do that. And I'm glad that I didn't, because I am in such a healthy place now that I'm excited to potentially bring other people into my sphere and just let the relationship evolve into whatever it chooses to be, because I'm in a happy, healthy place. And I know that I wasn't when I first came out to her. And I know that even though it will absolutely still be hard for her, I think that she is the most prepared now that she could ever be. She is in the best place in our relationship that she could be. And I don't know what more I could ask for than that. I found positive intelligence about a year into this growth period of ours. And I both love and hate that. Because I wish that I would have found it prior. But so as I started learning about positive intelligence and I started to learn more about myself, understanding my saboteurs and where they come from and how they come into play, especially in these arguments, that was really profound for me. I really started, I wasn't as good as I am now, but to understand Katie's saboteurs and why she was reacting the way that she was. It was to be able to understand another human being at that root level, which is what positive intelligence does. is the most amazing thing that I have discovered in all of my 42 years. And I don't just say that because obviously I'm a positive intelligence coach and this is my passion in life. Like, I'm here because I choose it. I'm here because it has monumentally transformed the way that I experience life, the way that I show up in the world. And I love that. And I wish that it wasn't so hard trying to learn it while I was going through all of this other stuff in relationship, but it also made me build some resilience and some a greater ability to juggle multiple things at the same time, which, that can only come in handy for me at this point. But, as usual, I hyperfixated on it as soon as I started on it, because that's what I do. And I wanted so badly to share it with Katie because, again, she was still my best friend. I still wanted to share everything with her. But I was also, again, just pushing, and she felt that pressure, which wasn't fair to her. I, of course, tried to push her into doing the program with me. She didn't want to. And so I, again, felt unsupported in this thing that I was so passionate about. But, in hindsight, I understand that I was still just trying to push. I can't say exactly when it happened, but at some point we started arguing less. We started to see each other more. I had started learning about all of the sage powers and really leaning into empathy and understanding. I finally stopped being defensive and just really I wanted to understand her experience more so than just, hey, this is who I am and that's all that matters. I also assume at some point in there is when Katie stopped grieving, because grief is like that, right? Like it lingers more than we ever want it to, but it's real. And she needed to go through that. There was one point in it all where she was brutally honest and she said out loud, I don't know if I am going to love this new version of you. And as hard as it was to hear, it was one of the things that I respected most from her because it was honest and it was okay, right? Like that was one of the first times that I felt like we were both really being honest with each other. And I think that was the leap of faith that we both needed to take in that moment to say, it's okay if you don't. I hope that you do. And obviously, eventually she did. So here we are. I will say after that conversation is when I really bet on myself. Like I was confident that the authentic version of me had to be better than a masked version, even if I didn't know what it looked like yet at that point. And so I really leaned into, I have to try. That's all that I can do is I have to try and be the best version of me. And if she doesn't like that version, I had to also grieve that maybe this won't work out and I won't be able to keep this relationship while I explore this other part of me. So yay, more grief. There was a lot of grief like sprinkled throughout the whole process because you're deconstructing so much of what you just got taught by culture without questioning it. I can confidently say that I am a completely different person today than I was 2 years ago. And it's not just because I came out as polyamorous. Masking is no longer my default, which is such a wonderful place to be. I have explored so many new things, new passions that I never explored before, or I got called back to things that I just barely touched on at other random points in my life, but that felt like coming home when I was able to connect with them in a real way. Like it's just all of the pieces have felt like they're truly falling into alignment. And I have never felt anything better than that. In this new chapter, I am the best version of myself. I am the most genuine, the most authentic. I am grounded. I am at peace and I have so much joy in my life. I can honestly tell you that one of the first things that I learned and realized from therapy was that I didn't have joy in my life and I didn't even realize it. And that was gut-wrenching. to realize that you can't remember the last time that you felt true joy. Because I was the hyperachiever. Everything was about accomplishment. Everything was about what can I achieve? What can I achieve? Joy doesn't require achievement. Joy comes from a sunrise or a flower or taking a deep breath on a beautiful day. Like, there's so much joy in the simple and the mundane, but you have to actually experience it. You have to be in your body, not just in your head, to experience those sorts of things. And I am in such a beautiful place now to bring all of that in on the daily. And I couldn't imagine my life the way that it was before ever again. And even though it wasn't in Katie's plans, she too has changed in the most beautiful and amazing ways. She has learned so much about herself, and she talked to a doctor about her anxiety. She has learned a ton about her autism, and she's had so many of those adorable moments of, well, duh, look now, knowing like all of the things that she has done or said or felt in situations, they just make sense now knowing that she is autistic, and I love that for her. And yes, Katie did eventually volunteer to go through the Better Together program with some of her friends so that it was for herself, not just for me. And I love that we are able to share this now and to be able to truly see each other and understand each other with the framework of positive intelligence, because it allows us both to cut through all of the bullshit, right? Like, when you get to the root level, arguments are no longer about whatever that little thing is that sets you off. It's, oh, I feel triggered right now. I wonder why. Let me lean into curiosity. Let me truly get curious about it. And then figure out what my underlying emotional thing is that I need to address. Okay, let's talk about it. I'm feeling triggered, and this is what I think is underneath it. It is such a better way to communicate with a partner. To really have that mental fitness on both sides is game changing. I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that Katie is lucky to be a part of this next chapter of my life, just as much as I am lucky to be a part of this next chapter of hers. We both worked our asses off to get here, and we deserve the happiness that comes. That brings us to the end of this episode. I hope that you found value in learning about my lived experience of coming out as polyamorous by orientation 7 years into a monogamous marriage, and all of the work that it took on both of our parts to come back together in partnership. Be sure to tune in every other week for new content. Don't forget to follow Belief and Balance Coaching on TikTok under Coach Nakiya, and check out the website to learn more about positive intelligence and the Better Together program at beliefandbalancecoaching.com. If you like this episode, make sure to follow and share.